Hello and welcome to the Round 10 preview of the Cats versus the Dockers at Perth Stadium on Saturday twilight for Doug Nicholls' round. Hi everyone, I'm Ben Reeve and welcome back to the channel. So it's the Doug Nicholls' round this week. All the teams have got their new Guernseys out, which is nice to see. I'm not sure how the clashes are going to go. Some of these are looking a little bit similar, but we'll see how we go. I think a lot of teams have got a dark and a light version of their strip, but guaranteed there'll be some confusing moments in some games, I'm guessing. Thank you if you have become a subscriber recently. If you haven't become a subscriber, there's still a chance. Of course, there's plenty of chances. There's Brad. Look at him. Look at the man. He just needs some sleeves. It is coming into winter. Help us get some sleeves for Brad Close. All right, so let's have a look at the game. Let's have a look at the recent history between the two teams. Now, Cats are going reasonably well against Freo lately in the last 6 or 7 years. We've won 6 out of 8, a couple of losses in there. Most recently had a loss at our home deck last year at Catriona Park. Lost by 3 points, can you believe that? Horrible. I think it was Jordan Clark's first game back in Geelong against his old mob. So he was okay. He didn't set the world on fire, but thankfully the Geelong crowd didn't boo him too much. He's making a go of it over there now. We lost by 3 points. We did make a late charge and nearly pinched it at the end, but unfortunately, a couple of late goals to get us within 3 points, but we didn't leave ourselves enough time in the end, and Freo got the 4 points. And we're looking pretty good at that stage. So we're 6-1. Not premiership favourites, but one of the contenders at least anyway. Jezza didn't even hit the scoreboard. Had 14 touches. Didn't even hit the scoreboard. Tommy Stewart had plenty of touches. He had 14 touches and 40 touches and 14 marks. Absolutely dominated. Blitzarves had a 20-20 game. He had 20 disposals and 20 hit-outs and 2 goals and 2 Brownlow votes, so he was doing pretty well for himself. Tyson Stengel, hopefully he comes back this week, but Tyson Stengel had 3 goals, so he played pretty well as well. We were held goalless for pretty much 2 quarters, or the equivalent, nearly an hour. We didn't kick a goal. We started really well. I think we kicked the first 3 goals of the game. Might have got a little ahead of ourselves at one point there, and Freo, before we knew it, they'd hit the front and we're pulling away to a nice lead, and then it was like, oh, hang on, we better try and we better sort some things out, and then the Cats came back late, but as I said, ultimately lost the game. For them, Blake Acres and Andrew Brayshaw were pretty good. Rory Lobb bopped up and was pretty dangerous up forward as well, but he's left now. Highlight of the day, probably the Blitzar's 55-metre goal with a few seconds left, about a minute to go, or 30 seconds to go. That was a pretty big goal there from 55, curling it around, but a bit of a tough one there. Probably the low light was the Max Holmes ankle injury, which ultimately sent him out of the side for the next 7 weeks. We still played reasonably well over that period. We hadn't gone on our run just yet, but the Cats were still okay at that stage. Probably, as I said, many thought Freo were doing really well at that stage. They dropped off after that really badly. Didn't perform too well for the rest of the year. So look, I don't know. I'm going into this game reasonably confident. We've won our last 2, believe it or not, at Perth Stadium against Freo. So we're doing okay. We still won 5 out of 6. Yeah, we lost our last game against the Tigers, but 5 out of 6 is still pretty good. Considering we've got a really long injury list. We'll talk a little bit more about the ins and outs in a minute. But throughout that last few weeks, with all the injuries that we've had, to be 5 and 6 through that period, pretty impressive. We may look back on that at the end of the year and go, oh, that was what set us up for our end of ladder finish. If we can get back on the winners list this week. If we lose this week, I'm going to start getting a little nervous again because we're going on these runs of wins and losses, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. Look, Freo's won the last 2 games, so they're not going to be a walkover. They won the last 2 games by an average of 43 points. They will not be a walkover at all. And they did have their first win against Sydney at the SCG for about 12 years. So they'll be pretty happy with that, having an away win and breaking a bit of a drought there. So they'll be heading back home, feeling pretty good. I think we've got the extra day's break. We're coming off an 8-day break. I think they're just coming off a 7-day break. It shouldn't make too much difference really for both sides there. I mentioned before injuries. I'll talk about that. I thought we got through the game against Richmond with no injuries, but turns out that's not meant to be. Ollie Henry has to rupture a testicle in the last few minutes of the game, in the last quarter. So he'll be out. I'm not sure how long, but maybe 2 or 3 weeks as well. Probably not back before the bye now, I'm guessing. We should get Brad Close back from his suspension. I imagine he's one of the first picked, you'd think. Jack Henry, Tyson Stenkel are a big chance to return from injury. That's what they're saying. The club was reporting that the other day. Not as optimistic about DeConning, Bowes, Stanley, Guthrie, Rowan, Danger. God, the list goes on. Was it 6 names there? I've probably missed one too. Not as optimistic about that next week or on this weekend. But, they could surprise us. Jai Clark, I really hope he does keep his spot. I think he showed a lot in that one quarter. Yes, it's a very different thing if you play 4 quarters of AFL footy. It's not. You can't go hammer and tongs at it for 120 minutes. You can for 30 minutes, and that's what he did. But can he do it for 120 minutes? We'll see. Maybe they'll give him maybe he'll be the sub again. Who knows? Possibly Parfitt and Ollie Dempsey might go out of the side as well as Ollie Henry. If there's a couple to come back in, that's probably my prediction at this stage. We very rarely get it right though with selections, don't we? So the club always knows more, and they keep their cards close to their chests. So we'll just wait and see what happens. And this is a Wednesday morning sort of recording, so we'll see how we go with that one. I guess the teams will get named later in the week. It's a Saturday game, so I'll probably the squad gets named Thursday night, and then we'll see what happens over the next couple of days with that. On the fringe players, I guess at the moment, a bloke that can't play yet unless we get a long-term injury is Ted Close. He's still killing it in the VFL. I think he kicked another goal, 14 touches and 11 tackles in the VFL. So if that was anyone else, I'd be playing by now, you'd imagine. So unfortunately, we can't give him a game just yet. A bloke that continues to impress me and a lot of other people is Phoenix Foster. Check out his VFL highlight from the weekend. His long bomb from 55. He's going to be a player for the Cats, so keep one eye on that guy. And I'm still hoping that Cooper White is a chance for another game this year. He was playing reasonably well on the weekend, pushing for selection. The VFL boys didn't win. We had a draw after we coughed up a bit of a lead in the last quarter and ended up with a draw. But some good signs. And again, it's not necessarily the result in the VFL. It's how we're developing these young kids moving forward. That's more the main thing. What are my final thoughts? Well, I think. Well, we'll definitely go into this game as favourites, you'd have to think. Maybe not hot favourites, but we'll definitely be keen to atone for last week's loss against the Tigers. I think we want to get back on that winners list pretty quickly. I don't think we'll want to have multiple losses for the second time this year. That's generally not a good sign for a premiership team, having multiple weeks of consecutive losses. I don't think that's a really good sign at all. I'm predicting the Cats will win by about 4 goals, 24 points, let's call it that. My bold prediction for this week is to Jai Clark to kick his first ever goal in AFL footy, so keep an eye on Jai Clark. If he gets picked, again, I don't know the teams yet, but I'm hoping that he will get picked. The Cats news over the week, I didn't realise that Tom Atkins was fined $1,500 after the Richmond game for touching an umpire or careless contact with an umpire, so his pocket's a little bit lighter after that. And there's been reports that Zach Tui and Tom Hawkins are keen to go on again in 2024, regardless of the result at the end of this year. So that should see, if Tommy goes on, it should see him, if he stays injury-free, should see him pass Joel Selwood for most games played for the club, and Zach Tui probably the most games played for an Irishman in the AFL. So fingers crossed those two guys stay injury-free and the passion still burns at the end of the year when they have to front up for another pre-season training. We'll see how they go. In closing out the show, thank you again to everyone who has subscribed. I want to see Brad's sleeveless arms again. There you go. Put some sleeves on, Brad. What are you doing? If you haven't already, check out the Sunday review of the Tigers game. It was I was on my own that one, just like I usually do on a Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday morning on these reviews. I usually post these of an evening, but that was I think it was the first episode on my own. I just couldn't quite make our schedules work with the rest of the panel members, but that's okay. If you haven't, the other one to check out is Behind the Play. You can check it out on podcast as well, on Behind the Play podcast, but that's on our YouTube channel. And that was with Noah from the UCAT YouTube channel. He's a Freo supporter, so we dropped that this week on Tuesday. So that's there and doing reasonably well, that video. If you could really help us at the channel, it'd be great if you could subscribe, but don't forget to like and comment as well. That all helps the channel. Interested to know your thoughts down in the comments about how you think the Cats are going to go. Coming off a loss, still got a reasonably deep injury list. 6 players that probably still could come back in, even if we get a couple back this week. I don't know, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget, stay Geelong strong and go Cats. See you, everyone.